This is the Behind the Line podcast, and this is Pacific Northwest Headline News for Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. This story's out of Washington. This is going to go a little long because I think it needs to be talked about. This is just a shining example of our criminal justice system in Washington and the laws that lawmakers make in Washington to cut criminals a break, no matter what they've done. A former Washington corrections officer who sexually assaulted 4 inmates at the City of Forks Jail in 2019 is out of prison after completing roughly 13 months of his 20-month sentence. John Gray was convicted of 2 felony and 2 misdemeanor counts of custodial sexual misconduct in December of 2020, was released from an Oregon corrections facility in late March, according to the Washington State Department of Corrections. He was let out of prison early because he accumulated earned release time, sentence reduction credits that are, by Washington law, awarded to all incarcerated people who participate in prison programs or show good behavior during their time behind bars. But even before his early release, Gray's 20-month prison sentence widely drew criticism from members of the public, victim advocates, and criminal justice experts who thought he should have faced a longer sentence. "I think it sends a terrible message," said Dr. Craig Hemmons, a Washington State University criminal justice professor who studied nationwide penalties for corrections officers who commit sex crimes. "I was shocked, very, very surprised to see such a low sentence for what appeared to be serial misconduct, serial sexual assault." Hemmons and other experts question why a man who preyed upon vulnerable women while holding authority over them didn't face tougher consequences, suspecting the guard faced lighter penalties because of the law enforcement profession he held. "I don't think the sentence is appropriate," said Brenda Smith, an American University law professor and former member of the National Prison Rape Elimination Commission, who helped create the standards for governmental response to sexual victimization cases in custodial settings. "The fact is, if those offenses occurred outside of a custodial sentence would have probably been higher." According to the Clallam County court records, Gray had sexual intercourse with 2 women and sexual contact with his other victims, including Holmes, who said the guard forced her to touch his crotch while she was alone with him in the jail library. Police investigators also found Gray paid bail for 2 of the 4 women after he sexually assaulted them. Michelle Devlin, Chief Criminal Deputy Prosecutor at the Clallam County Prosecutor's Office, recommended the 20-month sentence as part of Gray's plea deal. She said she offered him a deal after considering his 4 victims were in different emotional states and had varying abilities to testify. "I have absolutely no regrets. I did my job. I met with every one of my survivors. I took into account their emotional well-being and what I had available to me, and this is what we ended up with," she said. "I could have tried to push them over the edge, but I didn't think that was appropriate." The case went to trial, and Gray was convicted on all his original felony charges under the state standard sentencing range. He could have faced up to 5 years in prison. Should have been in prison for more than 5 years. According to court records, Devlin said she would have also requested the judge impose a higher sentence than what was typical. But the length of Gray's prison sentence wasn't solely in the prosecutor's hands. Here is the problem. Here you can look at our state legislators. It was driven by a decades-old decision by the Washington State Legislature to set lighter penalties for sexual assault cases involving corrections officers, compared with penalties for the most serious rape cases involving civilian offenders. What are you talking about? What idiot legislator decided that would be a good thing to do? You've got somebody that's got custody over somebody, and you're going to give them a lighter sentence for sexual assault? Who came up with this, and why? The state is insane the way it treats criminals who abuse people. It just makes no sense. After the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office completed their investigation of the sexual assaults involving 3 of Gray's 4 victims, detectives determined They had probable cause to arrest him on multiple first and second degree counts of custodial sexual misconduct. For first-time offenders, the standard sentencing range for one felony conviction of the crime can range from 6 to 12 months in prison. The court records show detectives thought they also had the evidence to charge Gray with significantly more serious crime, 2 counts of second-degree rape. The crime is a Class A felony, and for first-time offenders, a conviction of 1 count typically carries a prison sentence of 6.5 to 8.5 years, which is what this guy should have got for each one of these counts. Investigators believe Gray raped his 4th victim, Morgan Lee, while he was transporting on an hours-long drive from Mason County to Forks Jail in September 2019. On 2 occasions during the trip, as Lee's arms were handcuffed and her feet were in shackles, Gray reached under her skirt and penetrated her with his finger, according to law enforcement and court records. Law enforcement referred Lee's case to the Clallam County Prosecutor's Office, recommending prosecutors move forward with charges of second-degree rape. Devlin, the lead prosecutor, said she considered charging the state's rape statutes for each of the sexual assaults, but opted to go another route with the case. A prosecutor has an ethical obligation not to charge anything they don't believe they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, if detectives had evidence, there should have been proof, she said. So when I reviewed all the evidence, I decided that custodial sexual misconduct in the first degree was more proper charge. Some criminal justice experts who reviewed the facts of Gray's criminal case said they disagree with the prosecutor's decision not to pursue rape charges. They said charging second-degree rape would have made an important statement about the seriousness of the misconduct. You think? Devlin said she doesn't recall the specific factors that led her to decline to file second-degree rape charges because several years have passed since she prosecuted the case. Yeah. It's just insane to me that, in my mind, and I was in law enforcement for 9 years, this sounds to me like this prosecutor didn't care because the victims were inmates, and I don't know what they were in prison for. It doesn't really matter. But my guess is she has that holier-than-thou attitude and doesn't really care because they're inmates, and so she didn't take that case seriously. This particular corrections officer had been in trouble for other things, too, before this came to light, so this guy had a pattern. He's probably a serial rapist. I'm sure these aren't his only 4 victims, and it's just pathetic that somebody like that would get 13 months, and now he's back in the community, and he'll be looking for other victims, more than likely, When are we going to stop letting criminals rule the streets in the state of Washington? When are we going to tell Democrats, because it is Democrat policies that are doing this, that enough is enough? Washington doesn't take sexual assault and rape seriously, and you can see this by the 10,000 backlog of untested rape kits that the state crime lab is sitting on. And they say they're committed. A new law was passed to get these done in a more timely manner. And they say they're committed to cutting the wait time by 90%, from 600 days to 45 days. 600 days? Why was it ever 600 days? That's unacceptable. This is a rape. And to go along with the whole soft on crime in Washington thing, article came out today. What Seattle Police Department's advice to you is, if somebody breaks into your house, run. Leave as soon as possible. Are you kidding me? Here's my advice to you. Buy a shotgun because it spreads the most when you pull the trigger. Point and shoot. This has been Pacific Northwest Headline News. For more, visit BehindTheLinePodcast.com. Be safe out there. Thanks for listening.